to CityWorks, Oceanside, a series about Oceanside's governance, services, and volunteer opportunities. My name is Diana Wendman, and along with Lynn Hinshaw and possibly others, we are going to be exploring how Oceanside is run, the services it provides, and how you might become involved by volunteering. We are going to explore City Hall in all its various aspects, the police department, the fire department, our beautiful library, Tri-City Hospital, the very necessity of life, water, veteran services, and more. So come along and learn a little more about the city in which you live, Oceanside. Today's show is about
We're with Deborah Seiler, our San Diego County Register of Voters. We're between elections, which happen every 2 years, but it's very important for voters to become registered and find out information about candidates and issues before each election. So Deborah, we're so glad to have you with us today. I thank you very much. So let's just jump into the questions. What are the qualifications to be able to vote?
Really, the qualifications are quite simple. A person just needs to be, first of all, a U.S. citizen, 18 years or older, or 18 years as of election day, and not in prison or on parole for the conviction of a felony.
And how does one register and where?
Well, it's pretty easy to register as well. We have paper voter registration forms here at our office. We have them at DMV offices, post offices, libraries, city clerk offices. But more and more, a lot of voters are finding that it's very easy to register to vote online. And they can go to our sdvote.com website and click on Register to Vote. That links into a state online voter registration system.
Well, as you're speaking about absentee voters, or not absentee voters, but how you register to vote, the printed materials that a registered voter will receive from the state are the voter information guide and the
county ballot pamphlet.
Okay, and that is in different languages.
Yes. The County of San Diego is covered for not only English, but Spanish, Filipino, Chinese, and Vietnamese. And so we provide the sample ballot, this little booklet, in all of those languages for voters who need the language version. And the state provides a pamphlet that has to do with just the state propositions.
Okay. Well, when someone registers to vote and they have different choices, is there a party preference for them?
Yes, voters, when they register to vote, they can select a party preference, Democrat, Republican, or they can indicate that they have no party preference.
Does registering with a particular party aid or hinder their choices?
In most elections, no, it does not. The only closed partisan primary election that we have is the presidential primary, but that won't happen until June of 2016. In all other primary elections, in the June 2014 primary election, we have the top two primary election where all the candidates can be voted on by all the voters regardless of party preference.
Okay, if you're going to be away or perceive you're going to go away on election day, how do you go about getting an absentee ballot?
Well, over 50% of our voters currently are already signed up as permanent vote-by-mail voters. But if a voter is not already signed up and they wish to sign up, when they receive the sample ballot booklet, always on the back of that booklet there is an application for a mail ballot. So the voter simply needs to take that application, fill it out, and send it in to us.
Once you're on the absentee ballot, and you're on as a permanent absentee ballot register, can you go back into the polling places and do it not as an absentee ballot someday later on down the line?
Yes, if somebody signed up as a mail ballot voter, whether they're a permanent mail ballot voter or if they just applied, and then they decide they want to go vote at the polling place, the best thing for them to do is to take that mail ballot in and surrender it, and then they just vote a regular ballot. If they don't have that ballot to surrender, then they will be given a ballot, but that they will be instructed to put that ballot into a provisional envelope. We will make sure that that mail ballot did not come back before we count the ballot in the provisional envelope. But if that mail ballot doesn't come back, we'll be sure to count that ballot.
How about the military vote, the guys that are overseas? What do they do?
Well, those voters we send ballots to 45 days before the election. And those military voters who are stationed outside the county of San Diego can request a ballot. They can ask for their ballot by mail, by fax, or by email, and we send those ballots out to them.
How do people find their polling places?
Here again, this sample ballot booklet is very valuable. The polling place location is listed right on the back cover in that little box. And in addition, if voters lose this or they forget, they can go online to sdvote.com. They key in their street address and zip code information. That will bring up their polling place. They can also call our office.
What credentials must they bring to the polling station to vote?
No voter ID is required. We like to encourage voters when there's a really long ballot. It's helpful to bring this marked book in just as a guide for voting, but there's no credential required.
Okay, well, would you describe to our viewers the physical voting ballot itself and explain the process of filling it in?
Sure. The physical ballot is most typically a 19-inch paper ballot that has red ovals on it next to the candidate's name or the selections on the propositions. The voter is at the polling place. The voter is given a pen to fill in the oval. If they're voting from home, they can use any kind of a dark pen. Although we tell voters not to use a red pen because that won't be picked up by the scanner, and not to use like a Sharpie or a Marks-a-Lot, which will bleed through. But any ballpoint pen is perfectly fine.
And what happens to the ballot after they've filled it out?
Well, once the voter fills the ballot out at the polling place, it goes into the ballot box, of course. At the end of the night, the poll workers take those ballots out and they count them and they account for them, and then they seal them into ballot cartons. Those are brought in. 2 people must accompany those cartons into the collection center. So the poll workers go to one of about 75 different collection centers that are located throughout the county. And at that collection center, then, one of our field coordinators will come, and they will bring, most of the cartons will come back through the field coordinators to our office. If the ballot cartons arrive at the collection center, let's say past 9:15, 9:30, they will come in on the supply trucks that are stationed out there to bring everything back.
This is a tremendous job.
It's a huge logistical effort.
How is the reporting of tabulations handled?
Well, those ballots that come in on election night are brought into our office, and they all come into our back warehouse here. We have about 350 workers there who bring those in. They open up the boxes, they examine them, and then for each precinct there's a little memory card, and the memory card goes into a scanner. We have 150 scanners in that warehouse. And so for the ballots for that precinct and that memory card go to one of those scanners that's put in, the ballots are scanned in, the votes are tabulated to the memory card, and then the memory card goes into our computer room, and there it's uploaded into our ballot tabulation system.
What is the degree of oversight in making sure all of this is?
Well, we have a high premium on security in our office, as you can imagine. First of all, we have security guards, we have sheriff deputies, we have cameras, we have supervisors, all standing around to make sure that nothing goes astray. So there's a watchful eye over the entire process.
And this is all done by staff and volunteers?
That is correct. We hire hundreds of temporary help people. In our office, we have about 64 permanent staff people in our office, but we will hire 700 or 800 extra help workers to help us. Election night, we encourage the use of volunteers for people who are just working one night. That helps us with not having to do a background check and enter those folks into our payroll system for just one night's work. But for the people who work extra help for us during the run-up to the election and the post-election canvass period, we do pay.
Where do they find out about information on that, and where do they apply?
Well, they can apply online. They can, again, going to our website is always a good way to go. They can also call our office and ask for our Human Resources Director.
And what about the volunteering possibilities? Do they go through that same process?
Yes, they can go through the same process.
Okay. I do have a question on ballot counting. Does California or any other state that you might know of contract offshore for ballot counting?
No. This seems to be some sort of a myth that has been floating around in the blogs, but I've heard, for example, that ballots are being counted in Spain, and that's certainly not the case in any jurisdiction that I am aware of. But in San Diego County, our own technical services staff program the ballots. They do all the ballot layout in our ballot tabulation system. Everything is counted right here on Ruffin Road in San Diego County.
With the sheriff right there.
Exactly.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you on these questions is that 1 year we voted electronically. Is that still in place? What has happened now?
Well, now we have sort of a hybrid system. Most people, as I mentioned, vote on the paper ballots, but we do have one touchscreen voting device in every polling place. And lots of people who are elderly like to use those because they're easy. It's easy to read the screen, easy to mark the ballot, but they're there by law, by state law, for people who have need special assistance. For example, blind voters. There's an audio component on that touchscreen so that people can vote using the audio ballot. Voters with low vision can increase the type size on that touchscreen. So it offers certain advantages that the paper ballot doesn't.
Is this listed in the voter information guide so that the voters know when they get to the polls that this is an option for them?
Yes, there's a description of this in our in the sample ballot that we send out to the voters. So it is listed there.
Well, that is great. Well, what can you add, or do you like to add, that can be helpful for new voters?
Well, we always encourage all voters, new voters and continuing voters, if they're uncertain about the status of their registration, they can always go online and go to, check your registration status, and they just follow the prompts, enter the key data elements, and they can find out, if they're registered, what political party preference is listed on their registration if they're curious, and get a lot of information. If they want to find out where they go vote, and then maybe they've lost their sample ballot, same thing. They go and they look up, look up my polling place. Lots of tools for voters online. One thing I like to encourage voters to do, though, on election day, if they're going to the polling place, I always encourage people to go to their correct polling place. We have so many different ballot types in the county of San Diego. So if you go to your own polling place, you will be entitled to vote for everything that you're entitled to vote for. It will all be on that ballot. If you go to a different polling place, there may be something on your ballot that won't be on the ballot where you're voting. So to be sure that you have all the contests on your ballot that you're entitled to vote for, it's important to go to your polling place.
If someone did go to another polling place and they did vote and they voted incorrectly, is it just thrown away? Or?
Not at all. Not at all. If a voter goes to another polling place, they vote the ballot for that polling place. It goes into a provisional envelope. When that comes to us, we determine where that voter should have voted and what ballot type they should have voted. So if by chance the voter votes on a contest that they were not entitled to vote for, we simply overmark that so it's not read, so it's not tabulated. But we don't destroy. We count every valid vote on that ballot that voter was entitled to vote for.
Excellent. Well, one more question here. In a nutshell, where do the funds come from to support the Register of Voters office and staff?
Well over 70% of all the funds needed to fund the elections in the County of San Diego are provided by the county. We do bill some of our local jurisdictions, such as our cities and school districts and special districts, for a portion of their share of the cost. But by far the biggest share is paid for by the county.
Very interesting. Well, if you have anything more to add to this conversation, or shall we go take a tour through the plant?
Well, I think we should go take a tour of the plant.
Sounds like a good idea.
Where are we now? Where we find ourselves here is in the back room of the mail ballot voting section of the Registrar of Voters office. And this is not open to the public. We do bring people back if they request to observe back in this area. But this area is where people are now extracting the ballots from the envelopes. So at a certain point in the elections process, about 11 days before the election, we are allowed by law to open up the envelopes, pull out the ballots, and those are then examined and then sent over to our scanning area in our IT department. And they're scanned into the count. Now, of course, we can't release any results. There's no tabulation of these results, but they're released. And so just a minute or two after 8 o'clock on election night, when the polls close, we'll have all of the ballots from this early count to release.
What a process.
Where we are now is the processing area of the Registrar of Voters office. This is where we have this very large sorting equipment. When the mail ballots come in the morning, they're loaded onto this equipment and sorted through the bins. That captures the signature of the envelope. And once those signatures are all verified and that initial work is done, then those ballots come back onto this sorter, and then they are sorted by city. And at the same time they're being sorted by city, they are the bottom of the envelope is just milled. So that enables us to extract the ballots. So when we saw the people out there extracting the ballots, those envelopes had been milled open so that the ballots could be pulled out.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So as the ballots are coming down and you're taking the signatures off of them to match up, this is part of your fraud protection, so to speak.
That's correct. We check every signature on every envelope to compare the signature on the envelope that's returned with the signature on the voter's
And this is done computerized, the signatures, or is there a fellow that stands here and says the signatures don't match? How does that?
The signatures are inspected by a human being. Every signature is inspected by a human being. What the machine does is it takes an image. Those envelopes just fly through that machine at a very rapid rate of speed, and that image is being captured as they come through. But when the staff compare them, that's being done manually by a set of human eyes.
Absolutely fascinating. Now, tell me, is the procedure that we see here now for the absentee ballots, is that the same procedure for the poll ballots?
No, not at all. The polls ballots will be coming to us on election night from 75 collection centers located throughout the county. Now, we have 1,527 voting precincts for this election. Each one of those is assigned to one of those 75 collection centers. And when the voted ballots get to the collection center, one of two things happens. If they get there about 9:15, 9:30, there will be one of our troubleshooter field coordinator personnel there to bring them back directly into this office. If they're after that time period, they will be loaded on the collection center trucks, and they'll come in with all the supplies that are loaded onto that truck. Now, those ballots will come in back into our warehouse, and there we have scanners, the same type of scanners that are used for the absentee ballots, but these scanners have a little memory card associated with them, and the votes are actually tabulated to that memory card, and the memory card is uploaded into the computer. And that's how the polls votes are uploaded. So it's a slightly different process, but those ballots do not go through this machine.
How many IT staff do you have on hand in case?
Well, we have 4 permanent IT staff in our office, but we have dozens of folks. And then in our warehouse on election night, we have 150 scanners out there scanning those because they all have to be manually scanned. And we have over 350 people just in that tally area. We have a tally center. We have people who then move the ballots from the tally center over to where they pick up the memory cards. Then those memory cards are moved into the caged area of the warehouse where the 150 scanners are. And then once they're scanned, as I say, the scanned ballots are moved over into a storage area, but the memory card goes back into the computer room and they're uploaded into the tabulation system.
Quite amazing. I can hear that they're just starting to
fire up that
machine here. This is quite fascinating. Well, this is just such a privilege to be here and see this, and it's hard to imagine that this is going on all across the country in every county. It's absolutely astonishing to me.
Well, San Diego County is one of the largest counties in the entire nation. In terms of population, we're the second largest county in the state of California. In terms of registration, I know our numbers jumped, but we have always been just slightly behind Orange County in terms of registration. But the large jurisdictions typically do some kind of a process like this because more and more people are voting by mail. So, and in fact, in this election, I'm guessing that for the first time ever in a presidential general election, we may have as many mail ballots as we have polls ballots, and we may even have more.
Possibly supersede it?
It's looking that way because we have issued over 800,000, well over 800,000 mail ballots. And so, and the turnout among the mail ballot voters is typically anywhere from 2 to 20% higher than the turnout of the polls voters. So that leads me to believe that our polls ballot turnout may not be as high as our mail ballot turnout. This is what an official ballot looks like. This particular ballot is a test ballot that we use, but it shows all of the contests on the front and the back of the ballot. It's pretty lengthy. It's 19 inches long, and these ballots, when they are voted at the polling place, are scanned into scanners that will be located out in our back warehouse. The mail ballots that we saw being processed in the other room and extracted are actually scanned in this room on the scanners that you see right here. To date, we have approximately 200,000 ballots already scanned into the count. Now, clearly we cannot release any results. There's no tabulation yet. But once the polls close at 8 o'clock, just shortly after that, a couple of minutes after that, we'll be able to release those results. So the scanners that you see lined up here in our warehouse are scanners exactly like the ones that will be used election night. But they're placed here because on Saturday we have our election night scanners come in and they will be trained on how to scan the ballots. Now we'll have in election night 150 of these out in that back section of the warehouse, and that's what we'll use to scan all the ballots that come in from the polling places.
Well, Deborah, what happens after voting night and you're counting the ballots? What happens the next day?
Well, the next day we begin to count all the ballots that were dropped off at the polls. We'll probably have anywhere from 100 to 150,000 mail ballots dropped off at the polls. Those will need to go into the count. We'll probably have 50 to 75,000 provisional ballots. Those need to be researched and go into the count. So there's still ballots that are going in. As of election night, once we've counted the polls ballots, we probably only have about 80% of the entire vote result ready. We still have to add all of those other ballots into the count.
This is absolutely fascinating. Absolutely fascinating to think that this is going on in every county across the United States. This is quite an undertaking. I'm very, very excited to be here and to see all of this.
It's a huge logistical operation.
Well, I thank you so much for your time and your energy and everything else. I think this is a wonderful experience for myself and the viewers to see this.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for showing it off.
Two are hung up. One here. Here's three. Every year there's some slight changes.
With the sleeve very close to the box.
Okay.
Your button to say you voted, so get out the door.
So when contests are close on election night, it's always important for voters to remember that, as I said, election night we probably only have about 80% of the results in. We still have all those other ballots to add into the count. If it's a very, very close race, until we certify the results, which we do 28 days after the election, we do not declare a winner. Now, media organizations may declare winners or maybe speculate about winners, but there's not an official winner until we certify the results of the election.